Greetings to you all. Today, this is part 3 of the Homeward Bound series titled 144,000. This is the first fruit harvest reaped from Earth. We take our reading, and this is going to be based on a number of scriptures: Revelation 7, and then Revelation 14, and then Revelation 17. In Revelation 7, 1 to 8, this is where the 144,000 are introduced, and we'll take it from the second verse, which reads, "Then I saw another angel coming up from the east, who had the seal of the living God. He called out in a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom God had given power to harm the earth and the sea, and he said to them, 'Do not harm the land or the sea or the trees until we mark with a sign, place a seal upon the foreheads of the people who serve our God,'" God's slaves and servants. 4 continues, "Then I heard how many people were marked with the seal. There were 144,000, 12,000 from every tribe of the people of Israel. We have 12,000 from Judah, then Reuben, then Gad, Asher, Naphtali, Manasseh, Simeon, Levi, Issachar, Zebulun, Zebulun, and then we also know that then there was Benjamin, and then there is Joseph. But we know that Ephraim and Dan, they have fallen out of favor. So it was these 12 tribes that had to contribute 12,000 soldiers to the 144. We'll see soon why it's a military operation. Then we go to Revelation 14. 14, 1 to 5, and it says, "Then I looked, and there before me was the Lamb standing on Mount Zion. With him were 144,000 who had his name and his father's name written on their foreheads." Now this scene in Revelation 14 is when they've actually come from earth. They died and they've been and they end up in heaven, and this is the scene that has been captured here. So they are with Jesus on standing at Mount Zion, and they are with they had his name and the name of his fathers on their forehead, which was when they were marked in Revelation 7. And then it goes on to say, then they heard them playing, there was some music playing, and then 3 says, "And they sang a new song, celebrating divine deliverance." Now this is in brackets. So there's a celebratory song, so they're celebrating something before the throne and before the 4 creatures and the elders. No one could learn the new song except the 144,000 who had been bought, redeemed from the earth. So, as I'm going to say, this is actually a closed class. It's 144,000 days, no other class like it, and it's unique, and there won't be any other, and that is why they have this particular position, the place in Scripture. I think this will emerge as we continue with as I continue with the teaching. Then it continues in 4. It says, "And there these are the ones that did not sin or are sinful. They did not defile themselves with women. And this particular translation, the expanded translation, says that they are themselves pure, they are like virgins. They follow the Lamb everywhere he goes, and the 144,000 who were bought, redeemed from among the people of the earth, mankind, as people to be offered as first fruits, which is the earliest part of the harvest that was offered to God and the Lamb. And then in Corinthians 5 it says that they were not guilty of telling lies, and lie was not found in their mouth, and they were without fault, they were blameless. Then we go to Revelation 17, but this is just to give you an idea of actually what's going on here. This is actually talking about the tribulation, the Great Tribulation, which is what we are talking about actually. But it goes on, it says here in verse 12, the 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet begun to rule, but they will soon receive authority to do so from the beast. All 10 of these kings have the same purpose, and they will give their power and authority to the beast. So they'll be under the jurisdiction of the beast. He will be directing all operations during the period of the tribulation. They will make war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will defeat and conquer and be victorious over them, because he is Lord of lords and King of kings. He will defeat them with his called, chosen, and faithful followers. Those with him are called, chosen, and faithful. Here I'm highlighting the whole idea that this is actually like it's a military operation, and as we saw in 14, that these people, this particular class of people, they're answerable to Christ, and they are with Christ, and they're like on a special mission, something which is over and above the normal church duties that we have, because the church doesn't actually talk about fighting, warring, a fighting wing in the church. No, it doesn't. But of course, it's still in the church. But this is a fighting wing, a physically fighting wing, organized for that purpose. The Amplified Translation reads, "They will wage war against the Lamb, that is the Christ, and the Lamb will triumph and conquer them, because he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those who are with him and on his side are called the chosen ones." Here we will substitute the chosen one for his. They are chosen, but we are talking about the 144,000, and they are faithful. The Amplified Classic puts it this way and says that they will wage war against the Lamb, and the Lamb will triumph over them. So here we are talking about victory, which we saw in Revelation 14, when they are now in heaven singing that celebratory song. Now we'll start, we'll go through it now. So the mark that God put on these people, which is the seal, upon the foreheads of the 144,000, is a sign of servitude, of being a servant, of being slaves who are marked by their owner, showing ownership. And as we saw, it says, then we heard many people were marked. They were talking about 144,000 who were marked, who are from the tribe of Israel, and the tribes, we enumerated them. But the idea here is that it's 12,000 from each of the tribes, excluding Ephraim and Dan, and it's 12,000 apiece. So they received their mark before they went on duty. But this marking was actually done on earth, because remember it says that they are on earth. So when we looked, and there before me was the Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him was 144,000 with their fathers, with his name and the Father's name written on their foreheads. and they were told, do not, and he said to them, do not harm or damage the sea, the land, the sea, or the trees, until you mark with a sign, place a seal upon the foreheads of the people who serve the Lord. Now, this idea of marking, we saw it very early in Genesis, when Cain was marked, that no one should touch him, but he took that to mean that it's because he was particularly, God was pleased with him somehow. But anyway, in Ezekiel 8, verses 4 to 6, it reads, the Lord said to the man, go through Jerusalem and put a mark on the foreheads of the people who groan and cry about all the hateful, detestable, and abominable things being done among the people of Israel. And as I listened, he said to the other men, go through the city behind the man dressed in linen and kill, strike. Do not pity anyone and don't show mercy. Kill and destroy old men, young men and women, little children and older women, but don't touch any who have the mark on them. Start at my temple. So they started with the elders who were in front of the temple. So here, the mark here is to make sure it's a sign of protection, which is likewise in the case of the 144,000, that all the other people who are on different assignments to kill this one and that one, when they see them are not to engage with them, they should leave them alone. So we know that the 144,000 were marked with this sign on their forehead. But we also know that in Revelation 13:6, the second beast also forced all people, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to take the mark, the brand, the stamp, to show allegiance to the first beast. That's the kingdom of darkness. And this sign was to be on their right hand or on their forehead. But we note here that Satan is a copycat, because he wants to deceive people into believing that he's an angel of light and what he's doing is godly, and to confuse people. And we see this in 2 Corinthians 11:14. It says, this does not surprise us, and no wonder. Even Satan changes himself to look like, disguises himself, masquerades as an angel, messenger of light, trying to fool people into thinking he is from God, who is pure light. So his game of deception, it continues even then. And we see even this game of deception during that pandemic that we had 2-3 years ago, COVID. This idea of coercion, he actually forces people to, he does not do things through consent, he forces people to do what he wants them to do. So receiving marks, brand stamps on a person in God's kingdom is absolutely voluntary, freely given and freely received. Whereas in the kingdom of darkness, these things are forced upon people. Marks are a sign of ownership, allegiance, loyalty, protection, and commission. They show you are set apart for some purpose, a divine purpose in the case of God, to further promote, consolidate, establish the kingdom of God, and obviously to give him glory. On the other hand, Satan forces it upon people, and by whatever means, intimidation, duress, coercion, deception, etc. For him, it is a numbers game. It's quantitative rather than qualitative. But this is not to suggest that he does not expend a lot of time, or if not all his energy and effort, to corrupt, especially those who are greatly gifted and highly regarded by God to do certain tasks on earth. He goes all the way to corrupt and to taint them just enough with false, with temptations, etc., and false gospels principles, and he wants to corrupt them and taint them just enough and just long enough to disqualify them. For him, the end justifies the means. A win is a win. So coming back to the celebration what we talked about earlier in 14, we says that they were singing a song of celebration. They were celebrating a divine deliverance. And in 14, it says, and 14:4 it says, they will make war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will defeat and conquer and be victorious because he is Lord of Lords and King of Kings. He will defeat them with his chosen and faithful ones. And they sang a new song celebrating the divine deliverance, the victory that they had before the throne and before the 4 living creatures. No one could learn the song except the 144,000. Now there are examples of these songs of victory in Scripture. We have one in Psalm 98, 1. It says, "Sing to the Lord a new song, celebrating victory, because he has done miracles, wonderful acts. By his right hand and holy arm, he has won the victory." In Psalm 40, verse 3, it reads, "He put a new song, celebrating victory, in my mouth, a song of praise to our God. Many people will see this and worship and fear him. They will trust and find refuge in the Lord." Yes, so there are many examples of these victory songs, which is normal after victory that people will celebrate. Now, coming back to the whole idea that this 144 are actually an army. They have a specific task that they were on earth to do, a specific task which is unique and unique in this period of time. And it's a closed class. It's not open to everybody. What they were doing is a one-off thing. They would do it and that's it. The only other person in this period who are doing this would obviously be Michael, who enters the scene in the second half of the 7-year treaty period. And of course, we also have the 2 witnesses, but that's when they are attacked. As a defense, it appeared to be more defensive rather than offensive. So here, with our first point here, we want to talk about the whole idea of this military arrangement, which is the 12,000 from each tribe and put together for a certain assignment. In Numbers, this is war preparedness. This is what we have. They were being ready for war, set apart for war. And we have examples for this. In Numbers 31, 3-5, it reads, "So Moses said to the people, 'Get some men ready, arm some men for war. The Lord will use them to pay back, avenge himself against the Midianites. Send to war 1,000 men from each of the tribes of Israel.' So 12,000 men got ready for war out of the thousands of Israel. So here they only wanted 1,000 from each tribe. In Numbers 13, we know when he sent the scouts to go and do some surveillance of Canaan, he sent one from each tribe, so there was one for each, so there were 12 scouts to go and spy on the land to see what lay ahead of them. That was in Canaan. So the whole idea of when he calls people from each tribe, we know that is some kind of a military war kind of situation. In this case, it was surveillance, it was the exploring, they were gathering information. So apart for God's, so these people were set apart for God's work to meet, they were set apart to do God's work. So that's the military side of it. And that's why they're here on earth. They are going there, they are fighting. There are people that they are fighting. There are creatures that they are fighting here on earth. That is their assignment. Now, we want to talk about the whole idea when they talk about being pure, not defile themselves with women, what exactly this means, what it means exactly. When you are set apart for God's work, usually, or to work or to meet Him, sexual abstinence is usually demanded, because when set apart for work or to meet Him, one has to be pure, clean, and blameless before Him. Virginity for soldiers is not a requirement. Actually, there are a number of translations more precise on this point, and translated as celibate, which is abstinence as opposed to virginity. In Revelations 14:4, in the Amplified translation, it says, "These are the ones who have not been defiled by relations with women, for they are celibate." In the Easy translation, it says, "These 144,000 have kept themselves pure. They have not had sex with women in a wrong way." So there's a right way of doing it. And we will see. Yes, when you are here, we are talking about married people. It's an integral part of marriage. That's what marriage is all about. Well, not all about. Marriage is a component of sex. Not saying that when there is no sex, there is no marriage. But basically, I think you get the thrust of this presentation. That for a soldier to be said to be pure is not to say that you are a virgin, but rather that you have not defiled yourself by having sex with a woman or your wife. So you have to abstain for it for the period of the assignment. The Phillips translation puts it this way: "These are the men who have never defiled themselves with women, for they are celibate." So that's it, they've set themselves apart, and that also includes that abstaining from sexual relations. So if one considers the role of priests by this very strict interpretation, when you talk about not being a virgin, there would have been no priests in Israel then or in the future. So for the period leading up to the assignment and the execution of their mission, celibacy is demanded, otherwise the whole mission is cast aside, because you're not pure before God, and part of this being pure is that you don't, it actually, I think it gets in the way. It gets in the way because I think it divides your attention. But anyway, that's just my view. But the Bible says in 1 Corinthians 7, chapter 7, verse 5, Paul says this: "Do not cheat each other of normal sexual intercourse, unless, of course, you both decide to abstain temporarily to make special opportunity for fasting, prayer, or being set apart, called by God to do certain assignments." Then, of course, if you are in the covenant, a Christian covenant, you will understand it. You'd understand it very well. But afterwards, you can always resume your relations as before, or you will expose yourselves. Otherwise, you'll expose yourself to the obvious temptation of the devil. That's the Phillips translation. In Deuteronomy 23:9-10, this is what it says: "When you are camped in time of war, keep away from unclean things. If a man becomes unclean during the night, he must go outside the camp and not come back until nightfall, because of the emission of semen." In Leviticus 15:16 says, "If semen goes out from a man, he must bathe in water, he will be unclean. And he will be until evening with something, because he's been in contact with something holy, also rendered a person unclean." Being in contact with something holy also rendered some person unclean. So if you go there having had sexual relationships, it renders you unclean before God and for His purposes, for His assignments. So in Exodus 19:15, it says, "Then Moses said to the people, 'Be ready in 3 days. Do not have sexual relations during this time.'" So I think now we've put this sort of question of virginity. We're talking about abstinence. Now we know that the Hebrew army, the age requirement is that is anyone from 20 years of age and above, but he did not set an upper limit. So those other requirements, mental and physical ability and strength, obviously are things that will be considered by the person who is recruiting, because they're easily discernible by the eye. If a person has got he limps or he's only got one arm, because usually I think if you are fighting with swords, they usually like people with both arms and both legs. So, but the entry requirement is that you've got to be at least 20 years or more. So we can safely say that all the people who are going to be called for this assignment are on earth. They may have not reached 20 years old if some of them, the ones who are going to enter into this ministry mission at 20. They may not be yet 20, but they will be 20 by the time, at least 20 by the time it comes up. And in Numbers 1, which is what Numbers 1:3 says, you and Aaron must count every 20-year-old or older person who will serve in the army of Israel. So it doesn't put an upper limit. We know, and then it continues, one of the other characteristics, the other traits that are mentioned here is that they are not guilty of telling lies or found they are without fault. It's like Job, he was blameless before God. So, yeah, so the whole selection would be, it's something that God does. He's the one who determines whether you're blameless or not. So the mission is accomplished. That is why they are now singing this song, this victory song. The military campaign has brought great glory to God the Father and the Lamb. This campaign is very clear, it's very dear to God, and with Christ, the commander-in-chief, as we saw them, that they are with him, they are forever with him. They are dedicated and loyal to the Lamb. They have successfully delivered many human beings, saints, from the domination and control and suppression and oppression and intimidation at the hands of the prince of this world, that is the forces of darkness. Here we are talking about the New World Order specifically, because this whole campaign is set in the first 3 years of the 7-year treaty period. The second 3.5 years is the one which is characterized by the Great Tribulation, and the first 3.5 years is basically the period of truce or semi-truth, truce. The hostilities and persecution are going on, but not in a very concerted way, as will be witnessed in the last half of the 7-year period. So this 144,000 are clearly an elite group set apart for a singular and specialized purpose. One of a kind, therefore, is unique and is a close class. It is an exclusive class of Hebrew men. There will be no Gentiles in it. Hebrew men from the 12 tribes that God is, we mentioned earlier. So this is very clear that it's a class that is Hebrew men, there are no women, and an equal number from each tribe. Because we saw that, of course, Ephraim and Dan are excluded. the mission is set here on earth, and the army comprises Hebrew men, and none of them will be under 20 years old. The setting of the campaign is in the first half of the 7-year period preceding the Great Tribulation, where the 7-year period is a treaty or covenant that he set with the world, where he promised relative peace in the Middle East and in the world, because obviously he wanted to put himself as a champion of peace, present himself as a champion of peace. But also I think he has a self-interest because he wants to sit in the temple at a certain given time as sitting himself there in the temple as God and demanding worship. So it's self-serving in a way. So 3.5 years there will be relative calm and peace, reduced hostilities and persecutions. I suppose are being kept to a minimum. Then when what triggers this off is when the Exodus takes place, when the Hebrew people are being drawn out of Europe and the rest of the world, and been sent back home with the blessing of those governments, and them giving them, they're not going out empty-handed, as we saw in part 2. And then when Satan, he tries to stop them, but the Antichrist, he tries to stop them, but he fails. Then that's when he decides to go back for the other children, and that's when we have the start of the Great Tribulation. So I don't know whether after he has failed to stop them leaving Babylon and other countries, then that now triggers him to go and present himself in the temple as God. Or he would have done that, and then that happens. The sequence is not really important, but one thing for sure is that the Exodus is going to take place before the Great Tribulation. That's what matters. What sparked what off is another detail. So this is an elite group, yes, led by their commander-in-chief, the one and only Jesus Christ. He's directing operations. He'll be in heaven. He's waiting for them. The remit of the elite fighting group is to engage the vast array and assortment of non-human creatures living among us here, and some of them presenting themselves as human beings when they are not. But I think by that time they would actually they'd have gotten rid of all these pretensions. In a little while, they will discard all these this cloak and dagger thing, where they will kind of hide their true appearance, and they'll just come out, and we'll be seeing lizards and crocodile faces and all sorts of things here on earth. That will make us wonder. Things with hands, but with only 3 digits on each hand, and things of that sort. And some of these creatures, and a lot of them either are hiding, and others they can cloak themselves like in a human skin. They wear a human skin as a mask, the entire body, so you can't tell them apart. But they sometimes they had some giveaway signs. But otherwise, if you just look at them, you just think that is a normal human being when they're not. And some of them are going to come and pretend like they were coming from outer space when they are not. And we have here the Hivites, the Gibeonites, when they misled, deceived the Israelites during Joshua's time, and pretended like they were coming from some faraway place when they were not. They were just right there. So these people are here already. It's just a matter of some of them are going to show themselves in their true colors. They'll be able to go between the visible and invisible realms. You can see them physically, and then in the next minute you don't see them. So at present, the army of these creatures, Satan has been amassing an army of all sorts of creatures. Some with angel DNA, with animal and reptile hybrids, and also with human DNA, with animal and reptile hybrids. So, and some of them are hiding, others they can cloak themselves and pretend and deceive us and appear to be human when they are not. So it's been said that we are actually human beings. We have been overtaken here on earth numerically, that we are actually outnumbered like 6-4. But most of these 8 billion people that we count every year, or the United Nations estimates or counts, whatever, more than 4 billion of them are not humans. This is why this class of human beings is unique, because it will be fighting these creatures. So they will have the ability to fight in both realms. Whilst they are physical, but they can see in the physical, and they, of course, naturally we do, but they can also see the invisible realm. Just like right now, most of us don't have the ability to see demons, others can, but these ones will be able to do that. They can see a demon in the spirit, which is, which has not materialized in flesh and bone, but they can, they'll be able to fight them and war against them from their human perspective, with using obviously arms and swords that operate, that are effective in the spiritual realm. Because even in the spiritual realm, if you are cut, you are cut. And equally, I think spirits also sustain injuries. So this is what this 144,000 is here to do, to fight this other group of people, or not people, of persons who are not human beings, who present themselves as human beings but aren't. And we have a good example. There's David when he fought Goliath, and I think even Samson to some extent. But more importantly, we have when the Israelites took over possession of Canaan, they fought a lot of hybrid creatures there. Yes, they did. They fought giants. And they couldn't have done it by themselves. No, I'm not saying that the 144,000 are going to do it by themselves, but it was God who fought for them. But this is the kind of war we are talking about. It doesn't happen every day. It happened when they were conquering Canaan, and that's going to happen now as we free the earth from these creatures again. So this is what the 144,000 are here for. They are not here to evangelize. I'm not saying that they won't do that. I suppose probably they can. Of course, they should be able to do that. They know who they serve. But their main mission here is actually to fight and to annihilate and rid this earth of these creatures. That's what the 144,000 are. They are there to do. They are warriors. And we saw them, yes, after their victory in Revelation 14:4, and it reads, they follow the Lamb everywhere he goes. These 144,000. They were bought, redeemed from among the people on earth, as people to be offered as first fruits, the earliest part of the harvest that was offered to God and the Lamb. But there's another, the other harvest, that is the one that comes in the Great Tribulation, in which now Michael, Archangel Michael, is presiding, is going to be active on the earth at that time, during the second half of the 7-year period, which is the tribulation period. And so I think these ones they are not going to, their job will be done by the time the Great Tribulation begins. And Michael sets in, and then he will take care of things from the Great Tribulation, for the Great Tribulation. So that's the presentation. So on this note, I'm just highlighting the role of Hebrew people during the last days that have been determined by God for His people. This one is an exclusive one. They're not sharing with anyone. They're just an army of Hebrew men, 144,000 of them. And this brings us to our introspection and meditation. Revelation chapter 10, verses 8 to 10 from the expanded translation, and it reads, "Then I heard the same sound, the same voice from heaven again, saying to me, Go and take the open scroll that is in the hand of the angel that is standing on the sea and on the land. So I went to the angel and told him to give me the small scroll, and he said to me, Take the scroll and eat it, a symbol of internalizing the word. It will be sour, bitter in your stomach, because it is a message of judgment, but in your mouth it will be sweet as honey, because it is God's word, and because it brings salvation and vindication to his people." So I took the small scroll from the angel's hand and ate it, and in my mouth it tasted sweet as honey, but after I ate it, it was sour, bitter in my stomach. Then I was told, "You must prophesy again about many peoples, nations, languages, and kings. You must share the word you have just received." The contemporary English version for the last verse reads, "Then some voices said, Keep on telling what will happen to the people of many nations, races, and languages, and also to kings." Our benediction comes out of Numbers, chapter 6, verses 22 to 27. The Lord said to Moses, "Tell Aaron and his sons, this is how you should bless the Israelites. Say to them, May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord guard you. May the Lord show you his kindness, make his face shine upon you, and have mercy on you, and be gracious to you. May the Lord watch over you, lift his face, press his countenance on you, and give you peace." So Aaron and his sons will bless the Yashaelites with my name, and I will bless them. Thank you, and may God bless you all.